Hi, and welcome to Season 10, Episode 4 of My Words Our Journey, the podcast, When Ink Doesn't Run. I'm Monty, your host and author. In Episode 3, we ended with Ink and Presley returning from a bike ride to have dinner with her family. Let's pick up there with Chapter 17, The Childs Family. Pulling up to the RV, Ink could smell the food before he saw the two-tier grill filled with burgers, chicken, and dogs. He had never seen so much food on one grill. Never seen a grill that big, actually. Ever in his life. Behind Mr. Childs was a picnic table. It was covered with a white and black checkerboard tablecloth. Everything you could imagine, or maybe not imagine, for your burgers, fries, hot dogs, chicken. His eyes moved from the side of coleslaw and potato salad to the dessert section of cookies and a couple of different pies. There were two coolers, both filled with ice. One contained water, sodas, and teas. The other, all your alcoholic beverages. Mr. Childs motioned for Ink and said, "Grab a drink. Come show me your grilling skills, young man. Presley, go see if your mom needs any help, honey." It didn't take him a minute to divide. Now he'll conquer, Ink thought. "Mr. Childs, Bob, I want to be honest with you. I've never been to a cookout. Picnic. Never seen a grill like this in my life. I'd hate to ruin this beautiful artwork you've started." Bob laughed. "I appreciate that, son. Never mind. Grab that glove over there. Put it on. Grab those tongs, the black ones. Start turning the chicken over. Then, we're going to wait a minute or two. Add a little more of my homemade barbecue sauce. By then, it'll be time to add a dash of salt and pepper to the patties. Then flip them. And lastly, we'll rotate the dogs in between. You got all that?" "Yes, sir." "Great. I'll be back in a few. I'm going to go check on the ladies." And he was gone. Ink stood in front of the grill, thought to himself, "Is this a joke?" But it was no joke. No one came around the corner laughing. So Ink jumped into action. Didn't really think about it. First, he took the tongs, flipped the chicken very carefully, then rotated a few dogs, then a little more of the sauce, salt and pepper for the burgers, then turned them over. Rest of the dogs taken care of. Things were looking good, but the heat seemed a little high. He didn't want to burn anything, so he turned it down a bit. Ink rubbed sweat off his brow. He was about to get a tea from the cooler when Bob appeared. "Let's take a look." "Good. Good. Well, Ink, seems you're a natural. Even turned down the heat a bit. Good. The kids will be a little while. Now that the hard work is done, let's have a drink. Take a seat." Again, Ink went for a tea when Bob said, "No tea. Let's have a couple of adult beverages. What's your drink of choice, Ink?" "Sir, Bob, I tasted a beer once. My dad made me. It was hot and it smelled funny, so..." Bob laughed. "Okay then, well, let's explore a few of our options. Let's start with a couple of those Blue Moons. There's orange slices. Put a couple on a napkin. Come sit." An hour later, Presley challenged her brother and sister to a game of cornhole. Ink was having a good time. Her family was great. Stephen and Peyton, her older brother and sister, were awesome. Everyone was treating him so nice. Cornhole was a little harder than it looked, and by the time he was catching on, the game was over. Siblings laughed and joked. It didn't matter the score. It was a time spent together. He was seeing that. The voice, "Do not get close." It took him off guard. He wasn't sure what Grace meant, but he felt he'd find out later. It was late, and after a few drinks with Bob, the last couple hours, Ink felt it was probably time to head home anyways. Work in the morning and all. He made sure to make the rounds and thanking everyone for such a great time, and he meant every word. As he was preparing to head home, Presley stopped him, told him to wait a minute, and then disappeared into the RV. When she returned, she handed him two things, a pillow and a walkie-talkie. "A way for us to communicate. I have the channel and volume set. Just hit this button when you get home, and we can try them out." Then a quick kiss on the cheek, and she was running back to her family. Chapter 18. Searching for what? 2 weeks later. Ink was on his break. He had looked around the dry storage room again for Grace, who was not very happy with him at the moment. She was not happy with the pillow or the walkie, and she really didn't like the fact that he was getting closer to Presley's family. It had caused some tension over the last couple of weeks. Add in the fact he hadn't found anything. Grace was adamant something was there. He just hadn't found it. It was a really hot day. He decided to step outside for a minute. Outside? He thought. Hank looked around. A lot of activity, but nothing going on around the back of the general store. Slowly he walked around the outside of the building, looking high, then low, not knowing what he was looking for. The building was old, but well maintained. Roy did a great job keeping the grounds looking great, and Pete did just as well with maintenance, the main and the outbuildings. What could Grace possibly sense was around this old building? Then, wait, why is it dry under that downspout? It rained earlier, only a brief shower, not long enough to cool it down. All the other downspouts had the base below them, and there was water. This one was dry as a bone, and so was the area around it. Interesting. Another look around. He was still all by himself. He tapped on the pipe until he heard the sound that was different from the rest. It was a standard downspout, so his hand would not reach. But he looked around and found something of a branch just outside of the mowing area. He picked one that was thick enough that he thought wouldn't break and went back to work. Whatever was up there did not want to come out. They were both stubborn, and in the end, Hank won the battle. Their shirt, or blouse, whatever you want to call it, was pinkish. It had endured many rains, by the looks of it. He had carried a couple bags just in case he found something. He would look at it closer when he got home with Grace. Presley was waiting on the porch swing. They had had a couple of moments together. He had feelings for her. He missed her when she wasn't around. She seemed to feel the same way. Grace did not approve. Ink had put the shirt in his backpack. He always had it with him. Comes in handy. The relationship, if it was one, was new and, as far as he could tell, the first time for both of them. They did not talk about the summer ending, just what they could do in the moment or the next day. Ink took care of a couple of chores, then met Presley on the swing, 2 orange push-ups in his hand. It was kind of their thing. Then Presley broke the silence with, "Are we seeing each other now?" Chapter 19. Good questions. No answers. Grace wasn't speaking to him at the moment, even when he placed the garment on the floor and asked her directly if it was hers or her sister's. She had been with them on the porch. She had heard the answer. She wasn't happy. He sat in silence, not sure how to handle the situation. He was talking to a ghost after all. Is that all you think I am? A ghost? Well, he got her attention. Grace, you are a ghost. But you're more than that. I just need you to understand this is not easy for either of us. Together, I think we can find out what happened to you and your sister. Give you guys some peace. This was my blouse. A gift. I loved it. Her speaking had gotten better. Full sentences now, for the most part. Check for blood. The blouse was small. She'd been so young. So small when she died. Killed. Yes, killed. The color had faded over time, but he could see dirt. And what could be blood? Is that your blood, or are we looking at the killers? Both, with sadness in her voice. Should I take this to the police? More proof. Okay, more proof. Do you have a feeling where I should look? Cell phone. I don't have a cell phone, Grace. Not yours. Then whose? Too long of a pause. Unsure. Okay, so you're saying we have work to do. Let's talk about this cell phone. Ink wanted to understand. He had no idea how he was speaking with someone that was dead. But he did know it involved broken sentences and a lot of silence. Was Grace with him all the time, or did she go somewhere else and then come back? He had no idea. He hadn't asked. Cell phone. Maybe hidden on the grounds. So why on the grounds? Like the blouse. Convenience? Trying to set someone up for something? The crime? Good questions. No answers. Chapter 20. That's not a boat. A few days after finding the blouse. Ink was not having the best of days. The mornings were heating up, and by midday, it was downright hot. He had delivered several bags of ice to campers who didn't want to trek up to the general store. The Stone family, Lot 113, lost their precious golden retriever, which happened to be enjoying the company of other dogs down at the beach. As soon as he returned the dog to its worried owners, Nancy asked if he knew how to use a weed eater. Ink could not imagine what that was, but being Ink, he said, "Probably." So, the remainder of his day would be trimming from the entrance back to the general store. All he could think about was the lake. He was heading straight to the lake as soon as the last weed was cut. An hour and some odd minutes later, he shut the steel down. He felt like he had put in a good day's work and deserved some downtime. He was off the next day, had nothing to do but relax. Nancy handed him a cool towel and a grape-flavored water when he stepped on the porch. Nancy said, "Take these and go stand under the shower head around the back. It'll feel good and get that grass off. Thank you for all your hard work today. The front looks great. Take your day off tomorrow and enjoy it." She handed him an envelope with his pay. She was right, the shower felt great. When he was done, he felt like a new man. On the porch sat one smiling Presley. "Aunt Nancy said you had a hard day. Are you ready for some fun?" Inside, he was a little disappointed. He was tired, but he knew his days were numbered with Presley. "What do you have in mind?" "Would it matter?" she said with a giggle. "Nope." It turned out the family was taking the boat out, and he was invited. A nice ride, maybe some swimming. Sandwiches were packed. Grill was already on the boat. Cooler as well. They were just waiting on the two of them. They were now in the holding hand stage of whatever this was. It felt good, right somehow. When he saw the 3 boats lined up, he was surprised. "That's not a boat." The boat was much more like a luxury yacht, and instead of one, there was 3. "Looks like we picked up a couple of boats." Her family boat was in the middle. It was the second largest. It looked new, but she let him know they had bought it used a couple years back. They could sleep on it if they wanted, but Mom had no interest. Her family seemed pleased he decided to tag along. That made him happy. It was important to him somehow. The 3 watercraft slowly moved out into open water and headed east. Bob was at the helm and seemed to be in his element. Ink was surprised to see he had a cigar in his mouth, but it fit his look. Presley and Ink sat at the front of the boat with Stephen and Peyton. Each had a drink in their hands. The wind felt good as the boat sped up. It was his first time on a boat, let alone a yacht. He was truly enjoying it. He could tell they had done this hundreds of times. Did they really appreciate how lucky they were? How many people never got a boat ride, let alone a boat ride like this? It was about 20 minutes later when the boat slowed. Presley let him know this was one of their favorite swimming spots. The water was deep. They had put up a few ropes a few years back for swinging out over the lake. Ink wasn't exactly sure what that meant, but it only took a few minutes for him to find out. Ink could tell the guy holding the rope did not like seeing Presley holding hands with him, but he smiled and said hi as Presley made introductions to several young people who had been on the other 2 boats. "Newbie, you want to take the pleasure of going first?" Ink was not sure what he was supposed to do, so he looked to Presley for guidance. She knew at once. He didn't even have to say anything. "I kind of want to go first. Ladies first, right?" She didn't wait for an answer. She took the thick rope, winked at him, and then backed up, took a running start, and flung herself off the ridge, out over the lake. When she was at the furthest point, she shouted and let go. It all happened so fast, but she must have nailed it because everyone was clapping and yelling at her. The one with the big mouth took the rope next and said, "Let the man show you how it's done." Ink had to admit he went pretty far. He watched a few more, then someone handed him the rope. Ink pulled back, held on tight, ran, like his butt was on fire. The next thing he knew, he was flying over the yelling below, passing it actually. When he noticed how high and how far he was, he let go, hitting the water, going down at least 8 feet. When he broke the surface, everyone was laughing, cheering, and yelling his name. He swam in place for a few minutes. It felt good. Presley swam over. "Are you sure you'd never done that before? That was insane." Chapter 21. Contractors. Ink had been fast asleep when he heard the machinery. The sound was of a loud diesel engine, heavy chains being tossed about. Through the slat, he could see at least 3 men. 2 were smoking and swearing as they prepared the equipment. Prepared it for what, he wondered. He was never far from being ready to move. So, with backpack in hand, he swung open the door. "Stay," Grace spoke. Ink peered at the men again. To him it appeared they were getting ready to tear something down. "Stay." Ink sighed, laid his backpack down. He had a front row seat for the events that would take place. The third guy of the trio was a little slimmer, not smoking, and seemed to be disinterested in the going-ons around him. He snapped back from whatever his mind had been traveling to when he saw the chain begin to move by itself. The man knew it was heavy. He had lifted it, pulled it, and yanked on it for many years. The coiling chain was making its way towards the 2 men. The third, now paying close attention, was almost scared out of his shoes when a voice directly in his face, with conviction, yelled, "Run!" Grace didn't have to repeat herself. The man's name was Paul, but everyone knew him around town as Pee-Pee. His last name was Polanski. Unfortunately for him. He was a drifter, and he had drifted right out of town. The other 2 hadn't noticed. Their names were Hank and Daz. Each were using profanity and hand gestures to tell the other they had no idea what they were doing. The chain wrapped around their legs with speed and force. The next thing the pair knew, they were suspended in the air, upside down, caught up in the heavy chain with no idea what was holding it. From a distance, the sight was almost comical to Ink, like something you'd see in a funny movie. But the men were clearly not finding humor in the moment. Slowly they began to move in an up and down motion, then side to side, not hitting each other, but coming close. Then he saw the expressions on their face change, as if they were listening to a voice carried by the wind. When they both acknowledged, with a shake of their head, they were quickly released. Ink was astonished to see the 2 men coming towards the treehouse. What had Grace said to them? The men walked around the base of the treehouse, then the field directly behind it. When they returned and went back to their equipment, he was sure they were leaving. He would have lost that bet. One carried a shovel and the other maneuvered the small machine with the bucket on the front of it. They worked like their lives depended on it for about a half an hour. Then they were gone. Ink had watched, but didn't know exactly what they were doing. "Now, you'll never have to worry about water gathering around the base of the tree," Grace said. Ink laughed. He was not sure if it was appropriate, but Grace didn't laugh or comment either. Ink was never sure what to say or not say around Grace, but he did know to say thank you. He was appreciative of what Grace had done, getting rid of the contractors, making sure that water didn't gather around the base of his new home. He fell asleep that night feeling good about things, knowing he had to help Grace and her sister. It was the right thing to do. And I think that would be a great place for us to stop today. Again, I'm Monty, your host. Thank you for listening to When Ink Doesn't Run. Have a great day. Thank you for the support.